Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk HR, Ethan. Today, we're going to pick up on a topic called men's health, and it's something that myself and Charlie we discussed last year during earlier in the year, actually, wasn't it? We talked about men's health, and in season 2 of Let's Talk HR, we thought we'd broaden the scope a little bit and talk about a few more things that are affecting men. We've done a women's health, and we've had a really good conversation about that with some brilliant people. But we also need to talk about men's health because workforces do tend to combine majority of two sides, and then obviously there's some people that identify in the middle. I'm joined today by Charlie, Steve, and Simon. Simon, you're just launching a brand new recruitment business focused on well-being, I believe. How's it going? First couple of weeks?
So far, so good. The shutters have been open for 2 weeks, like you said, and I've got my first kind of client projects on, which is great. So no, in all seriousness, I've had a lot of encouragement from, people already in well-being roles, just saying there's not really any dedicated recruitment person who's in that space who can help me find a role in well-being or maybe find me my next role. So yeah, I've been really encouraged by that so far.
Charlie, how are things going? Okay, positive wise.
Yeah, good.
We chatted a lot of things going on.
Yeah, it's different projects that we're looking to roll out. We're just building in the kind of infrastructure where we can look at triggers within each individual to be able to then give them a specific piece of messaging to help them at that particular time. So if they're struggling with anxiety because of sleep, it will be a messaging around that from a therapist or our clinical network, and or a piece of content that can support them. So it's very bespoke. So rolling that out at the moment and factoring that in, and then working on some projects. So it's really exciting time. So yeah, it's going well.
And Steve, it's really exciting to get you in here because obviously you've got myself, Charlie, and Simon. We're all very office-based careers. And yourself working within the construction industry probably have a greater insight into more sort of blue-collar workers. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. It's something that's very passionate, or something I'm very passionate about, is well-being within the industry. We're actually using OK Positive within our business. And it's starting to roll across the team, which is good.
Now, a lot of the time, I'm just going to throw up this video because I've seen this on social media, and it's a distressing video to start with. And let me just show it for you.
Who do you call when you are at your lowest? Who is that one person?
Nobody. I'm a man. No one cares.
Not a single soul. Nobody.
No one. Because I'm all alone.
I think I speak for all of people. I say. I don't call.
Nobody. I'm a guy. I'm a shit.
Speaking for the guys when I say literally no.
Y'all call someone? Nobody. Just no one to talk to. You cares.
No one. I'm a man. No one cares.
No one. Not a single fucking person.
I wouldn't call anyone. I wouldn't turn to a single person because they don't care. They will just find a way to use it against me.
We can call somebody.
Now, Charlie, that is upsetting for me on many ways because it's multiple men reinforcing a stereotype that there's nobody that they can turn to. It would be used against them as a weapon. And this is what people, men are learning. This is social media. This is 10, 20 men, 15 men that we saw on that clip, all saying they can't turn to anybody. We need to tell them something different, that it's okay to talk about mental health. It's okay to talk about your problems, don't we?
Yeah, ultimately, I think it's a stigma that affects everyone. It's not just men in that particular sense, but I guess it's a perception that men are traditionally strong, tough, will provide, will go out and do hard graft, will be physical in what they do. You can see that in any line of life, whether it's sports, whether it's work. You're always, pushing. You always got to do the best to be the best, and it's unattainable in my opinion. I think that the stigma arises because people don't know more about their mental health. They don't understand what they're going through, what they're struggling, if other people are. I think over the last, I'd say 6 to 12 months, I have seen a change in terms of men's groups, of people sharing and doing it and positioning it in a different way, because ultimately we all want to be the best version of ourselves. And we find that there are loads of places in life for men that actually team sports, groups, memberships, clubs, whatever it is, everyone tries to help as a collective, everyone tries to help each other. But when you're in ordinary day life or family life, you want to be perceived with that perception of I'm tough, I know what I'm doing, I'm in control. And quite often it's not the case. And that's where I think people fall back. And when you see from that video, people are falling back into that mindset of, okay, well, everything's going wrong internally for me, but I don't want anyone to know about it because I don't want them to see me as weak or vulnerable. And so I think we're seeing a change slowly but surely, but there's still too many people that are struggling with that. You can see that from the statistics of in 2022, the UK alone, 17.6 in every 100,000 men took their life, whereas 4.7 in every 100,000 females took their life. So it's like there's a disparity there of over 4 times that. And for me, it comes from that stigma that's definitely stronger for men in that sense because of that perception of how people see them.
Steve, how do you get sort of blue-collar workers to talk about mental health? Because that can be at times very, Charlie mentioned like rugby club culture and stuff like that, which is something I'm familiar with, which is you don't talk about stuff like that because if you do, you get the mick taken out of you. And construction can be very similar. How do you break into that to go, it's okay to talk if you're not feeling okay?
I think, as Charlie said, it is becoming, the stigma is being broken. There's good organisations now, Mates in Mind. There's other organisations that people are using and getting behind. I was on site Monday, and we're doing a director safety tour, and one of our clients is actually doing, I think it was yesterday, suicide prevention talks with the supervisors. And they're also talking about tiredness, because they said all of what's going on in the world at the minute is playing on people's anxiety. They're not sleeping properly and it's affecting them. And the tiredness will obviously cause more concern with health and safety. So I was really encouraged to see that happening, and that was Monday this week. So, it is getting better, but it is breaking the stigma. I mean, Crossroad are putting some brilliant videos out. I shared one yesterday. It is about the guys, they're chatting about football and stuff in the calf, and the guy's ripping a tissue up and he's really worried and he's not opening up. And it plays out 2 different videos of what he could be saying and what he actually is thinking. And it's just slowly getting that message into the construction industry and, big burly blokes that are working on site. It is okay not to feel all right. It is okay to talk about stuff. It is upsetting to watch them videos with everyone going, oh, you can't talk to anyone. You can, can't you?
And Steve, just sticking with you, because one of the points that you just raised is just sort of flagged in my head. If I don't sleep, if I'm anxious about something, if Charlie's anxious about something, if Simon is, the worst case is we don't respond to an email quick enough. I'm sat at my desk all day doing stuff. Whereas the point you make about health and safety, someone could be controlling, hundreds of tons machinery and moving really important sort of safety equipment around, and it could risk someone's life if they're anxious about something and don't talk about it and have that lack of sleep.
There's a lot of publications, a lot of video clips, and I think that is the way to do it. Just raise the awareness, by the developers and the principal contractors doing talks with the supervisors. The message is going to get spread. And I thought the tiredness one was a good thing because, if you're a machine operator, crane driver, or working on a roof, there's so many things. You're working at height. If you're not on your game, you're putting people at risk and putting yourself at risk. So raising that awareness is a really good thing to do.
Now, Simon, you've done quite a lot of work sort of one-on-one with people that are struggling from this, and normally everyone's just, I'm fine, it's fine, I'll get through it, it's just a difficult time at this moment in time, it'll be fine. and they're just not actually telling you what the problem is because they just want to sort of live in this disbelief that everything's going to be okay. Is there a way to coax it out of someone? How do you approach that conversation?
Yeah, so over the past couple of years, I've worked with a lot of men in their 20s and 30s and 40s primarily, from all types of different backgrounds actually, and different industries. It takes a long time to build up that relationship, for them to trust another person, who they're paying to get an insight into their inner world. But just building that relationship, and yeah, people just for the first few sessions maybe just saying, I don't know what I'm doing here. I feel like I can't handle my problems, but I've just seen so many like themes over the past few years where I feel just a lot of guys just carrying around so much shame, like internalized shame, and not feeling like they can voice it. That's where anxiety will come from, depression, or maybe some form of addiction. But just that, I think there's also some mixed messages in the world now. We're seeing, without getting too political about it, there's visibility of real strong men, authoritarian leaders around the world. People thinking, oh well, there's a message there about that, and then there's this other message saying we've got to be vulnerable and talk about our feelings with other people. And I've seen again when we get to people in their kind of 30s and 40s, the pressures that people have if they've got families, from maybe caring for elder people or children or whatever it is, financial pressures. So much for men to deal with, and so many confusing messages out there about what is it to be a man right now, and is there a conversation about masculinity and toxic masculinity, all sorts, expectations on women. So I just think there's so much there for men to be dealing with right now. And it's of course therapy is there, but I'm really seeing, as Charlie mentioned, there is a real uptake in men's groups. I'm seeing an awful lot of that, and that's a space where people can just come along, and it's not as intense as one-to-one therapy. Even if you just sit there and listen and just hear people sharing their stories, you don't have to share. You can have that sense of camaraderie without too much oversharing, feeling sense of community, because that isolation, men just locked in their own world, not being able to share. That's where a lot of these kind of suicide numbers are coming from. So, yeah.
There's an alarming statistic, and we're going to touch on divorce a little bit sort of later on, and the sort of impact that can have in sort of a man's life. But there is a statistic where 82% of men build a solo relationship because they stop playing team sports, they stop engaging, they just end up being them and their partner, and 82% have a really small friend group because they sort of start to restrict. And things like men's groups is a great way to sort of get people engaged and back out. And, I think my problem, Charlie, is the pub culture. It's not my thing. I don't like going to the pub. I don't like drinking every day and stuff like that. But it's still a very British culture of, if you want to socialise with men, you go to the pub and you have a pint. Is there any, men's groups is a great way. Is there any other sort of ways that come to mind about how you can get out and about?
It's interesting, actually, because, we talk about going to the pub and chewing the fat, social fitness, things like that. And ultimately, yes, it's a bit of a catch-22, because the conversations that are brought about because of having a beer or over a beer with your friends or getting down there to connect is actually really beneficial. But at the same time, you're consuming something that aids the problems that you may have originally or exacerbates and makes them worse. And so for me, I spoke to my fiance about this. We started a golf group in terms of men being able to talk to each other, because we found people who are rubbish at golf who said it's a great bit of exercise to get a bit healthier, gives you a bit of time away, a bit cathartic, a bit of space. And she positioned it as that's men's way of asking each other out for coffee and cake. So in a perspective of, you're not asking to go for a pint, you're asking to go and actually exercise and be a bit healthier and go and make a fool of yourself on a golf course. But I've seen a change once again in that, because once you get people in an environment where someone steps up and starts talking about it, Steve's great at this within and what he's doing within a WhatsApp group that we have. But ultimately, it's whoever steps up and makes that impression on everyone else, and then they'll follow, because ultimately you're showing not vulnerability or weakness. It's very much showing strength in the way that you say, these are the things I'm struggling with. These are things that I'm finding work for me. This is how I feel on a week-to-week basis. This is what I'm going to do next week to be a better version of myself and improve. Because you position mental health in a way that it's to do with personal development, and you position it the way for your audience. If you're in an audience of guys who are struggling and they don't want to talk about feelings and mental health and therapy and the intrinsic clinical side, talk about it in a way that resonates with them. So it's like, what's making you feel bad this week? What's making you feel good? Let's talk about ideas that we can do to catch up with each other, check in on each other, but actually just do it as like, this is what mates are for. And that's all mental health, but we're positioning it in a way of socializing. And potentially it doesn't have to be things surrounded by beer, alcohol, that sort of area. But I think it does come from individuals being able to openly share. And that position of vulnerability and weakness that has traditionally been known is actually strength, right? People who share their stories, and we're seeing it more and more, of people who share their stories of going through the dark times, coming out the other side, sometimes still going through those dark times. And you position it how you want. But ultimately, it's how the other person takes it. So if you're talking to a meditating yoga instructor versus a construction worker who focuses on the football at the weekend and smokes 50 cigarettes a day, they're very different. It's a stereotype, but it's very different motives, but there's still the same mental health for everyone. So position it in a way that people can understand and what motivates them. And for me, getting people together to talk about what motivates them, what they're passionate about, whether that's a hobby, whether that's golf in this instance, whether it's going for cold water immersion and going into the sea, whether it's going for walks or
sounds horrendous.
Yes, I know, but it's brilliant. And that's the thing. It connects people and everyone wants to be connected. But when people shut themselves off, which we're seeing in instances for individuals in these, particularly men, they shut themselves off and say, oh, there's no point. Oh, no one wants to listen to it. Oh, no one cares about what I'm feeling. But actually you'll find that if you can build a group of people that all have the same motivations around it, then you will find people that want to listen and want to help. And that's the kind of way I would look at it.
Steve, Charlie makes an interesting point, and I think he kind of positioned you as already doing this and already leading on it. But from what you've said, one of the things that strikes me the most is if you're in a group, you're in a lads group and stuff like that, just take the plunge and say, I'm having a bad week because of X, and show that vulnerability, and it is strength. Just telling people how you're feeling will help others explain how they're feeling, and just, even if you're in a good place and you've had a bad week and you've come out of it, just sharing is helping people start talking, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I think you've got, I've got a few different groups of golf is one. I think it's a good outlet, and you definitely missed it when there was lockdowns and you couldn't meet. So I think the dressing room, changing room, banter and stuff you have in football, rugby, cricket, whatever your chosen sport is, it's on a smaller scale, but golf is a good thing. You meet up. The WhatsApp group Charlie's referring to is we did all go for a chili dip in the Felixstowe Sea. That created a group of people. We've done it twice, and people just keep getting added to it. And it's cycling as well. I'm into cycling, and there's a small group of us, mammals in our lycra. But it is. You can ride alongside each other, have a chat. It might be a couple of you, it might be a load of you, but I like going down the pub for a beer, but it's that battle in it of you're having beer, which is toxins, and it's not helping your health. But if you go and play golf, or you go for however many miles you go on your bike, or go for a walk, all of these things help, and people do want to talk about it. And it is showing that you care. And there's lots of people that want to help or want to talk about what's going on in their world.
And I think from that, just in terms of the effect it's had on me, understanding the things that we learn from that group from other people, it's almost positioning it as you're learning something and you're taking something from it. And that's what really excites me, is ultimately I've taken something from it. I've been able to provide things that I want to share, and therefore people can take from it what they will. As Simon was saying, you may not share openly, but you're having an effect on those people because they're seeing this information. They're seeing other people and it's working for them. And therefore it's like, okay, that's an idea I can try. And that's what it's about. It's that knowledge share, in my opinion. And I just think
there's a lot of people on there, on that group, and people message me separately and say, I never say anything, but I really like the group. I look at it every day. And which is really, really powerful. I think there's 26 people on there, and I reckon there's probably maybe 5 people that contribute regularly, but other people are looking at it and getting, like you say, taking something from it. You know, it all started with motivational stuff, but there's all sorts of things that go on there, and it is sharing. Some people have got anxiety issues, they talk about them. We'll talk about different techniques we use, you know, training, going for a walk, being in nature. So yeah, it's created a nice little community. But I go down the gym regularly, and that's another community of people. And you just got to have different sets of people you can talk to.
And I think one of the things, you know, that's really strong from that, whether it's reading a text message, whether it's going on a bike ride, whether it's anything like that, it's just a little escape window, isn't it? To just know that it's not you and your problem stuck alone, isn't it, Simon? Just being able to just extract yourself from a situation, even if it's for a second, often helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, 100%. And I just, you know, if you had it where you text the buddy or there, and how are you doing? Well, actually, I'm not doing so good, and just, you know, asking searching questions. I found it myself where, you know, we can take ourselves outside of our own problems or issues we've got going on just by listening to someone else. And just, you know, all we can do really as friends is just be there to listen, not provide solutions. But there's so many men still that will find that quite hard, as in that's like admitting defeat almost, and showing that kind of vulnerability. But yeah, just having, it's interesting, isn't it, how, you know, we've never been more connected, being able to be connected with people globally as well. But then the paradox of that is we've almost never been so lonely, you know. And I speak from taking my recruiter hat off, my therapist hat off. I actually look at I used to have so many mates, so many acquaintances, like my WhatsApp, but I look at now thinking, how many people do I actually really properly keep in touch with and keep in touch with me now? And how do we really know what's going on in each other's lives? Would I feel comfortable sharing with this guy I'd not spoken to for a couple of years the state of my mental health? I'm not sure I would. So it's really interesting with, you know, technology can be an enabler, but then almost made us more lonely as well, in my opinion.
I think the pandemic had a lot to do with that. I remember, you know, I left my job and stuff like that because of a whole range of things. And I wrote an article on it. It's on LinkedIn, sort of, and it was all depression, stress, and breaking point basis. And my wife's the one that sort of pulled me out of it, made me quit and take 6 months off. And some of my friends from rugby were reading it and just astonished by what had gone on, going, why didn't you ask? And it was lockdown, so there's no one there. You know, thankfully, me and my nephew got really close because we were playing Call of Duty together pretty much every night because it's fun. And I think a lot of people and a lot of friend circles have changed with the pandemic, and you know, it's worrying that some people can sort of find themselves on their own and stuff like that. And how do people sort of find these activities and stuff? It can be quite difficult at times, can't it, Charlie? Like, just how do you find a cycling group or a WhatsApp group or something like that? And it's about putting yourself out there, really, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose that there's different outlets, right? But it doesn't have to be natural. Like, so our group around golf started with 2 people, and it started with me and one of my best mates saying, we need to play more golf and check in and check in on each other because we haven't seen each other for a long period of time, because, you know, we see what everyone's doing on Instagram and, you know, life's going well there. He got married, oh great, all this stuff's going on, but I don't really catch up with him. So then it trickled, and you just invite one person each, and then suddenly they invite one person, and then suddenly they invite one person, and you build a network out of what started with 2 people, and it just multiplies. And eventually we now have a process where someone brings along whoever they want, they play with someone else in the group, and then they get to know each other themselves. And it's amazing. We've seen other guys go off and spend time together separately who never knew each other a week before. So you don't have to be, you know, this vision of you're popular, you've got loads of friends, you know, everyone's going to want to spend time with me. It's, you know, everyone has a circle of around 5 people. If you're lucky, you leave school with 5 people you really know and care about. And therefore you can grow it in your own natural, organic way. And even if it is just one person that you spend a lot of time with and you check in with, I have that with a friend of mine who has a startup business, and we went through the same situation of struggles and stress and anxiety around business, and then we started mentoring and helping each other. Now suddenly, I mean, I've seen him just as much as I've seen my fiance over the last 3 months, because we work in the same office and we go and socialize, and that's how you start it. It doesn't need to be a massive network. You've just got to find a way that connect with someone that's passionate about a similar thing as you. It could be anything. It doesn't have to be even physical activity. It could be, you know, you both love the show Game of Thrones or Lord of the Rings. Well, let's watch that together and see what it's like. Or playing video games. Like that, it's amazing that the conversation you have while doing something else can actually be really powerful and meaningful for you, because there's less pressure one-to-one staring in the whites of each other's eyes. So I think,
like you're saying, it's like-minded people or like-minded activities. Like one of my mates the other day said, "Oh, should we go for a ride?" And then he went, "Actually, I feel really unfit. Should we just go for a coffee?" Yeah, why not? Let's went down to Costa for an hour and a half or something, had a coffee, talked over loads of different things, challenges at work. You cover so many different topics. And that's where women are better than blokes, aren't they? They go and have a coffee and a cake and they chat about stuff. They listen to each other. They don't try and solve the problems, which is what men generally try and solve the problems rather than listen and, you know, just let people offload whatever's going on. But, you know, if you just talk about challenges you've got, they might have the same. And I think that they're the things you definitely missed during COVID, because you just didn't do that. You didn't have the FaceTime with people.
Now, one of the really interesting things, and one of the main variances, when I was looking at sort of women's health and men's health, women go through this massive hormonal variance throughout their lives, throughout different cycles, throughout months, you know, from periods through to menopause, through to giving birth, and it plays haywire with how their sort of hormones work. But men have a hormonal cycle as well, and it's a simple one. It's you wake up in the morning, your testosterone's quite high, middle of the day it's middle, end of the day it's low, and that sort of works in cycles. And then you can do things to sort of spike your testosterone. So it's funny, isn't it? Some of the things we talked about, going into cold water would, you know, that's instantaneous shock, spikes testosterone. Going for a bike ride, doing exercise, spikes your testosterone. Any form of energy, pick-me-ups, coffee, spikes your testosterone. So all these things that we've talked about so far have actually a tangible hormonal impact on a man in a positive way. It's when you do nothing that your hormones are just going down and down and down. And this is one of the reasons why men get angrier and stuff like that, because obviously a spike in testosterone, if it's not sort of utilized on a regular basis, can get them quite angry. But it's funny, isn't it, Simon? We've talked about all these things. We've talked about all the things that it's just make a step, do something. But what we've found, without even looking at it or talking about it scientifically, this is what happens. It actually creates a positive testosterone impact for us, which is quite a simplistic version for men, because you need more, you know, you lose testosterone as you get older, etc., etc. So it is more important to do active things.
Yeah, it's so interesting. As I was listening to you then, I mean, people can come to see me and we'll go to therapy and talk about all sorts of stuff, but there's a lot of people out there with just dysregulated nervous systems. So when it starts to get really interesting is that mind-body connection. So like it's been mentioned on this discussion, you know, cold water immersion. When you say to someone, look, take a cold shower 2-3 times a week, it's not going to solve all your problems, but it's going to put your body under stress, your nervous system under stress. And it's that kind of a body regulation. So, and I'm hoping the dial's going to be shifting around that, because I do genuinely think that still people will be thinking, you know, mental health, stigma. But then actually, if there's just little things people can do within their routine, and it's not necessarily about opening up to someone else and sharing about, you know, problems and feelings and things, but actually just being more connected to our bodies. And no, it's not just about doing meditation or trying to do meditation, you know, listening to Headspace for 5 minutes and thinking, Christ, I need to change my fantasy football team. No, it's not that. It's just little things that we can be doing for ourselves. But I genuinely think that kind of mind body, you know, somatics, that's all in the therapy field. It's all the rage at the moment. But I think for men's mental health, it's so prevalent because we're always, it's the way we've been born. We're always looking for effectively ways to survive and to develop ourselves. So I think it's a really interesting space.
And yeah, for me on that, I think I've got a very recent lived experience of this. So I woke up this morning, I was incredibly angry and irritated, and I tried to make things as simple as I can for myself. I got to a point of frustration where I'm hitting a wall and I go, why am I doing that? I have no idea. I then look back, and luckily for me, I try to make things like for dummies as simple as possible for me so I can understand it when I'm stressed, when I'm angry, when I'm struggling. And I look back and I looked at my journal of the things that I've been feeling, and I realized actually there were 1 or 2 things that were bothering me during last week, which have filtered in to how I'm feeling at that particular time. And if you mix in that testosterone side of, I woke up early and I had no idea why all of those things that had been subconsciously building up, I put a system in there for me to then understand myself retrospectively. So for me, making it simple and looking at what causes me to be negative and stressful and anxious and angry, and then learning from that, it helps me to understand it, because quite often, and I don't know how everyone else feels, but frustration for me comes with lack of knowledge, like ignorance. So if I don't know what's happening, if I don't understand a situation, even at work, or if I don't understand or grasp something, I get frustrated because I feel stupid. I feel like I don't understand this. So for me, it's understanding myself. And you're right, Simon, you don't need to talk to other people about that. You can ultimately learn and understand that for yourself, because it's you, you're unique. No one else is like you. You need to figure that out for yourself. And that's why there is an emphasis of being able to understand yourself a bit more and learn a bit more about yourself.
Now, you're not going to do this, but I'm going to do it for you, Charlie, because, I did it last time. You talked about a journal. You talked about logging how you're feeling. And this is something that we've talked about before, which is sort of connected to the OK Positive app, which Charlie's the founder of. But something as simple as grading yourself out of 10 and then putting a few notes as to why you felt that way can help you understand what's changing your moods, how you're feeling, what sort of things have happened that have made you feel that day, can put you into a reflective mindset. So the free version of the app, you just can grade yourself on the day and it asks you why you feel like that. I'm just checking with Charlie that I've got that right, because I'm pretty sure I've done it recently. But you're going to tell me if it's changed. And then if you understand what has caused that, as you said, you looked at your journal, you found what your cause and effect was, and you tried to make a positive change. But it's just something as simple as, even if it's just on the last, before you go to bed, most people look at the phone before they go to bed. Grade yourself. How was today? Today was a 6 out of 10. Why was it a 6 out of 10? Because this. And then you have a conversation with your partner or with the mates in the pub and go, why are you in such a bad mood recently? Well, you've got some data to look back on. And, as Steve, you've said, men straight away try and find solutions for other men. Well, you can try and find a solution for yourself with something like this, can't you?
Yeah, I actually do use that journaling every day, and I think it's good. You give yourself a mark out of 100, and then you look at a subsection and journal why, and it is good to reflect on it. And just actually doing it, you're more in tune with why you're feeling as you are. There's one thing I wanted to just say. During the first lockdown, and I don't know where it come from, on Facebook, there started to be this press-up challenge. So you do 25 press-ups, and then you talk about mental health. And it was one of them weird things that I suffer with gout. And when it was the first lockdown, I was sitting there on video calls all the time. My gout got really bad. And that really started to play on my mental health, because I was just getting down, thinking I like to exercise. I'm sitting in, got a few bits of exercise equipment here, and I couldn't do it. This press-up thing was really good, and it's really powerful. And what you did, you just did 25 press-ups, videoed yourself doing the press-ups, and then you nominated someone. And so you started tagging people in. Everyone was doing them in their gardens, in their kitchens, and that grew really big community of people doing it. You did it every day. I think it's for 25 days. I carried on doing it, and it really got me back into feeling good. And again, like you're saying, it gets your testosterone going. It's talking a little bit about mental health or whatever's going on for you, talking about stuff. Some people said more than others, but it was good. Little initiatives like that can help.
it's great when, like, so remember the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge? That was a real positive thing, sort of making awareness of that, something like that, talking about men's mental health. But it's just, if you take anything from this so far, it's just start, make a step, do something, isn't it, Charlie? Just make some effort to let someone know how you're feeling, whether it's your partner, whether it's your dog, whether it's your budgie, whether it's a teddy bear. Just make some effort to let someone know how you're feeling.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I always say it with physical health, right? You get the sniffles, you're getting a cold, right? You're bunged up, you're going to get a cold, you're going to be unwell. So you understand that because it's visual for you, right? And then what do? You find out Lemsip, hot water bottle, rest, whatever it is that works for you, fresh air, hide in bed all day to avoid yourself getting ill longer. Mental health is the exact same way. You get your sniffles, your triggers. You need to understand what they are to then find out what your Lemsip, hot water bottle, rest is to avoid you getting to that crisis point. So it's about recognizing when you're at a stage earlier than you would be when you're into that crisis point. Understand, okay, right, I'm starting to feel a bit weird here. And that's the point to open up to people that you know, or someone that's around you. For me, it's very much my partner. So I will always talk to her around, I've had a crap day because of this, and these are things that are bothering me, but this is what I'm doing. And yeah, how have you been? And suddenly, because I've shared that, she'll want to share something back with me. And I've found that that's really powerful with people around you. It may not be, and this is where it goes back to motivations for me. It may not be to help yourself all the time. Quite often speaking about how you feel makes other people open up around things that they weren't comfortable to open up about. It may be because of my line of work, but I tend to tell everyone who's willing to listen how I'm feeling and what I've been struggling with, because ultimately you want to find that common human nature, right? People want to be familiar with each other. So you say, oh, I support this football team at the pub. Someone will talk about football back to you and they want to connect with you. It breaks the ice. It's the same with mental health. Just talk about a little thing. You don't even need to position it as mental health. You say, oh, work's been so crap recently because of X, Y, and Z, and my manager's given me stick. And suddenly you'll see something back from, oh, well, no, work's been really good for me, but I've been struggling with X, Y, and Z because of, and suddenly you're opening up a conversation where everyone knows it's okay to speak like that. So if you take those steps, suddenly it becomes a much more manageable thing where you realize you're not alone. And it can be a lonely place to think that you have problems that no one else has. You've got intrusive thoughts. I had intrusive thoughts that made me hate myself on a regular basis every day. And it was only when I saw other people talking about it, particularly online, but there was a George Ezra advert where he said he had intrusive thoughts and OCD. And I went, my gosh, someone else has it. I'm not a weirdo. I'm not alone. And suddenly then I was more open to talk about it and learn about it because I didn't shut it down. So it's not, you need to go shouting from the rooftops, but understand yourself and start trying to help others, because you never know. For men listening to this, it can help your daughter, your son, your partner. It can help your mate down at the pub just by being a bit more open. And, we're lived experience of this. For example, Steve's group, I go back to that. It's made a massive difference to me. So that's one person. And if everyone does that, and there's 27 people in that group, if there's every 27 people helps another 27 people, suddenly the problem is getting smaller and the stigma is reducing. So I really think it is important.
One of the things you touched on, and I'm just conscious we need to close off soon before you get kicked out of your office, Charlie, is sort of the media. And you mentioned sort of that media helped you, but there's so much negative media out there. Obviously, we looked at a video at the start and to sort of close it off. There's the gym media, which is similar for females on Instagram. There's all these airbrush men with their ripped six packs and so much tan on. Look at me, I'm this Greek god. There's women saying that men have to be earn over 100k to be able to date me and stuff like that, and less than 3% of men earn over that. And then the one that we need to support and we need to also talk about, which is not all men. So there's a lot of media at the moment which is all men need to be treated as X, even though not all men are. And it's a difficult conversation when it comes to health, because women need to feel safe in sort of environments and they need to take protective measures, and men need to be there to protect them, but at the same time you don't want to necessarily be seen as something negative. How do we start to put out more positive male media, Simon? How do we start to make people know that it's okay to just be you with your quirks and your weirdnesses and the things that you like, if it's going into the freezing ocean like Charlie and Steve like to do for some weird reason, or or you're into Dungeons and Dragons or playing computer games or any? How do we just let people know that this is okay and it's good?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there's just so much media out there, isn't there? So much information. We can be bombarded on Instagram, for instance. You look at the rise of that guy. What was his Andrew Tate? Was it? Who's been cancelled by all the media companies now? Obviously, I don't profess to agree with anything that he says, but I find it interesting how there's a demographic of people, and they're mainly guys in their early 20s, mainly in the UK and the US, that he's speaking to these people. And they're following his content and maybe feeling a bit lost in life and hearing confused messages. So, if you look at someone like that who's made the most of social media, and it's like a form of addiction, isn't it? Scrolling and picking up these messages late at night, not sleeping. So how do we change that? How are there going to be voices which can maybe talk about masculinity in its kind of purest sense? So if we look back, and there's been some really interesting studies about this. So there was this one guy, I can't remember his name, but he basically went and studied all sorts of different civilizations all over the world, looking at what masculinity was traditionally, around the 3 P's. So provide, protect, and procreate. But the fourth one, so it's almost like masculinity 4.0, if you like, is around purpose. A man with a purpose can be an unstoppable man. And I'm really passionate about this. So it's not just about having a job that you love. It could be about a hobby that you developed, or some extracurricular activity, somewhere where you feel there's a sense of purpose. I've seen so many times, especially in my clinical work, where men feeling that they don't have any meaning or purpose in their lives or their existence, that's when they start to look to act out in other ways, in forms of escapism. So I think there's if there can be, I don't know, Instagram influencers or just figures, role models that can talk about purpose. I'm not talking about sports stars, because I think that's a double-edged sword. People can talk about Rio Ferdinand or so on, or whoever, talking about mental health, but then thinking, well, I'm not an athlete. It's okay for them. They've got tons of money, and I feel a bit envious for them. So I just think there has to be some sort of middle ground there, because people like Andrew Tate have captured that kind of, there's a lot of confused people out there, men, and he's kind of targeted that audience and drawn people in. But I'm not being how can I say, I am full of hope. I think the dial is shifting, but there needs to be something there more about men with purpose.
Everything is relative, right? So if you look at the pictures of your gym goers, your bodybuilders, these are the elite level of fitness, right? But everything's relative. So for me, if I go to the gym and I see all the pictures are of these very ripped individuals, it puts me off, because I look in the mirror and I look down and I go, I don't look like that. So it stops people from starting. Ultimately, everything's relative. We've got to have a perspective of going, well, what do you want? What are your motivations out of this? For men in particular, what do you want to gain out of this? Like, set yourself a goal. Like, it's your goal, and you reaching that goal is better than anyone else reaching their goals, because it's all relative. And so, you don't go to the gym and look like The Rock immediately after coming out of it, unless you're very lucky, I guess. That'd be a miracle. Ultimately, you go there because you want to get fitter. What's your motivation? As Simon was saying there, what's your purpose? My purpose is I want to improve my muscle strength by X in a year's time. And build yourself to those goals and have that purpose and go, okay, I'm proud of that. And that's something I've achieved. And the problem we find is all these young men in particular are looking at other people and saying, I wish I had that. And that's what social media brings is, oh, this guy's got 15 cars, he's got all this money, and he's made everyone talks the tip of the iceberg. You never see what's underneath, or you never see the duck. You see the duck, you don't see the feet swimming and pedaling underneath in the tough times. So if we have more people talking about, I've always said this when it comes to business, we see all these successful entrepreneurs and read all of their books. I don't want to read those. I want to read the books on day one when they're going through the first steps of their business, when they're in the lowest point. I want to know right then how they're feeling, not how it looks 10 years later when they're on their yacht, super yacht in the Maldives. And that's what we need to remind people, is that men, you are more than enough as you are. Find new ways to improve yourself and what you care about and what you're motivated by, not what society says you should look like, or the gym adverts or social media says. Just find what your purpose is on that, no matter how small it is, because it's always you're 1% better each time. And as an individual, that's personal development, right? And it can go and fluctuate and go up and down, but having that purpose to push forward is what gives people the motivation to look after their physical health, their mental health, which are intrinsically linked. So that's what I'd add to that, Simon.
Yeah, I think
very Team Sky 1%, isn't it?
Goal setting is really important to drive your purpose, definitely, in all elements of your life, whether it's your business, your career, personal, your relationship. Set goals, have a date night, go down the gym or go for a walk. You can set them as, like you say, it's all relative, isn't it? You want to run a marathon or you want to catch the 5K or whatever it is, you just set the goals, and that gives you the motivation, and then you've got the purpose to hit that goal.
Yeah, 100%.
I think just to sort of wrap it all up, we've talked a lot about sort of it's okay not to be okay. We've talked about having a purpose. We've talked about getting involved. We've talked about just doing something to increase your testosterone levels and sort of get involved in something. But if there's anything that we can leave you with based on what the conversation is today, is think about your 5 closest friends. Think about the 5 people that you're closest to. Pick one of them, ask them how they are, and tell them how you've been mentally, what your struggles have been, what's gone well, and then ask them about them. And it may help you, it may help them, it may help you both. But if you do one action, just tell someone how you're feeling and be open to them telling you how they're feeling. And hopefully we can start to make a positive hit on this male suicide rate, because it's getting too high, it's too high per capita. And really, we need to start talking more about what's affecting us as individuals and start to make positive improvements in terms of communicating with each other. This has been Let's Talk HR. This has been Men's Health. Thank you very much to Charlie, Steve, and Simon for joining me tonight. And we will catch you on the next one. Take care.